Hello everyone, this is Paul Benyon. I will be your presenter today for our continuing series of CEU webinars that are really designed to be more educational in nature. For those of you that have not attended our CEU webinars before, we've had a number of them over the past few months covering everything from estimating to project controls. We're really excited to talk about earned value management today. It's a pretty hot topic in the industry. But first, a little bit of background about myself. I am the Director of Training at Hard Dollar. So I'm very much involved in helping our customers and those that are using Hard Dollar to be successful in what they need to do to get their projects where they want them to be. So from the estimating side on through project controls, we as a team are very much involved in helping our customers achieve success in that realm. So really excited to talk about the topic for today. So let's go ahead and jump in, get started. Again, today's webinar is Basic Principles of Earned Value Management. And just a little bit of background about Hard Dollar, because we are very much involved in earned value management. That's one of the pieces of the puzzle, as you know, in project cost management. And Hard Dollar really has taken a leadership role in project cost management. The systems that we provide are all about bringing together all of the systems that you use to manage costs in your project. And a big part of that is monitoring performance. So just for those that are new to Hard Dollar, we have a tool set for estimating, for project performance, and we also bring different systems such as scheduling system, accounting system together to work together to give you confidence in being able to come up with the numbers that you need to come up with. So that being said, let's talk about EVM, earned value management. And you'll notice as we go along, earned value management, the kind of standardized terminology around it, really likes to use acronyms a lot. So why not just start off with an acronym, EVM? So earned value management is one of many processes out there or methods out there for being able to measure progress, performance for your projects. So whatever type of work you're doing, certainly there's some way that you're monitoring how your work is being performed. And earned value management has really kind of come to the top as being the most common method out there for being able to monitor projects and manage them, make sure that they are performing the way that you need them to perform. But it's very interesting if you were to ask 10 different project managers in the industry what earned value management actually means, you're probably going to get 10 different answers to it. So the purpose of the course today is really to break things down, simplify it, and just talk about the basics that you're able to walk away feeling confident that you understand what earned value management really is all about, and more importantly, how it can help you in your role and your company be able to do a better job at monitoring your performance and understanding how to stay within budget, how to stay within the planned schedule. So one of the best ways to look at the purpose behind earned value management, it really begins with this question: what's the best way that you can measure the progress of your projects? So think about that for a minute. How would you answer that question? If you had a clean slate, new project, let's say, for example, that you're a project manager and you recently won a project and you're tasked with making sure that this project is completed on time and within budget. So think about it. What would you do to try to make sure that that's on track? What are the kinds of things that you would measure? Well, first of all, for sure, you're going to have a budget that you put together for the different items, and usually that's going to be your project estimate that's been put together. That gets authorized and becomes kind of the Bible that you're going to be comparing against as you go along with your project. And along with that, you're also going to have a plan in place for when each of the tasks in your project are going to happen. And as you know, these two things, your cost, your budget, and the schedule that you put together, they don't occur in a vacuum. they are working together as the work is being performed, and they are affecting each other as the work is being performed. So part of the role of earned value management is to bring your cost performance and your schedule performance into a single view so that you can see how they are interacting with each other, because they really do cross paths throughout the entire project. But if we're looking at the basic ingredients for earned value management, there's a few keys that really ensure that the cake we're baking is going to be a good cake. And so we have our costs that we talked about defining, and we are going to develop those costs typically in a work breakdown structure and come up with a budget. And as we do that, we're also going to take a look at how does that connect with the schedule that we have. So we're going to start taking each of those activities in that work breakdown structure, and we're going to work out when this task ends, this next task begins, and we're going to figure out the timing of our budget. So we end up with a scheduled budget, and in the past, this often in earned value management terms was called budgeted cost of work performed, or BCWP. Well, or budgeted cost of work scheduled, BCWS. And as you can see, you can start to trip up on these acronyms. So it got simplified down in recent years to be called your planned value. So think of your planned value as basically the activities, the budgeted costs for the activities in your project. Okay. Now, there's another term that gets used a lot, and that is when we take all of those planned values for each of those activities in the project, if we total it all together, we're going to end up with a total cost, a total budgeted cost for the project, and that is typically termed budget at completion, or BAC. So if you see that, it's just talking about the total cost for the project. So it makes sense that we're going to use these planned values as a baseline for the project once we start to do the work, right? So we want something to compare to, a measuring stick, as we start to track things. So we have our first ingredient in there, kind of the foundation of the project. So what other ingredients do you think would be needed to have a successful tracking of a project? So, you know, we start with our planned value. We start to compare against that as we start to do the work. And as the work is completed, we're going to begin to incur costs. And we can track those as actual costs. And what we can do is we can start to compare those actual costs to the planned costs, the planned value, so that we can get an idea, are we within budget, are we over budget? So the second key ingredient would be your actual costs. And with this, we can begin to see what we're spending and the timing as well, because we're going to get our actual dates of when our different tasks are occurring. And we start to be able to compare this timing and this actual cost to the plan. But there's a third ingredient, and this one is really the crux of earned value management. It's the essential. It's kind of like the sugar in the cake. Otherwise, your cake's not going to be any good. So the third ingredient, really what it tells us is where should we be at this point in time? How much should we have spent? So far we know how much we plan to spend, how much we actually spend, but we don't really have any barometer about where we should be. And that's what this third ingredient is, and that's actually what we call earned value. Okay? So these three ingredients together will work together to always allow you to know where did you plan to be, where are you, and where should you be at. So let's take a little closer look at earned value. So earned value, there's a really simple calculation to come up with earned value. It's simply taking that budgeted values, so that planned value, and multiplying it by what percent of the work we've completed so far. So nothing more than that. That gives you that earned value and tells you where you should be. Well, let's take a look at an actual example so that we can make sense of how earned value helps. So in this scenario, we're going to say we have a project of 4 miles of railroad track that need to be laid. And we are planning from what we budgeted out that it's going to cost $4 million to do that, roughly $1 million per mile. And it's going to take 4 weeks, we are planning, for us to do that work. So we could say our planned value is it's going to take $4 million and take 4 weeks to lay that railroad track. Well, so we get to work, and we're working. We go about 1 week, 2 weeks. We get to our 3rd week, and this is the scenario we hit. We have our actual information coming in, and we can measure and see, oh, all right, our actual cost is only $2 million. So we have only spent half our budget, and notice that we are 3 weeks into our 4-week project. So with this information so far, how would you think we're doing? Looks like we're probably doing a pretty good job. Well, it's kind of a trick question because we'd probably be patting ourselves on the back and giving high fives with the assumption that based on the actual compared to what we planned that we're underrunning on our costs because we've only spent $2 million of the $4 million and we're 3 out of 4 weeks along. But the answer to how we are doing, instead of saying, hey, we're underrunning on our costs, really the answer should be we don't have enough information yet because we're missing, remember, one of those key ingredients. We're missing the earned value. See, the earned value would tell us how much should we have spent so far so we can tell if that $2 million is good or bad. And so remember how we come up with that metric. Let's go back and take a look. So the cheers and happiness, unfortunately, are going to have to fade away. And here you can see we have the formula. We got our budget times percent complete. In other words, we take the planned value, multiply it by the percentage of the rail work we've done so far. So let's do a little analysis. Let's just take our example and see how that would look. So the first thing that we want to do is we've got to know how much work have we done. So how are we going to find that out? Well, we've got to go and go out to the field and actually be measuring that. And luckily, we were already measuring that on a daily basis. We are keeping track of how much of that railroad have we done, have we laid. And since we've been recording progress daily, we see that we're 25% complete. Wow, so that changes everything. Because before we were kind of assuming, hey, we're 3 weeks along, we're way under budget, but wait a second, we've only done a quarter of the railroad. So now, let's actually run the calculation and see why this is a problem. So only 25% complete. Instead of being an underrunning project, we realize we're in trouble. If we do our little calculation, on the left we have, okay, earned value management is budget times percent complete. So let's just plug that in. Our railroad project, the budget or the planned value was $4 million. We've done 25%, so multiply that out. We've done $1 million worth of the work. And how much have we spent? All of a sudden that $2 million doesn't look so good, does it? So now we have $2 million already spent in 3 weeks. And at that rate, if we were to just continue at this rate, now that we know our earned value, we can see and we can kind of project out, you know what, we're going to end up spending twice as much money because we've spent $2 million instead of $1 million so far. If we continue at that rate, we're going to end up with an $8 million project. And we can also see we've got 2/3 more of the, or 3/4 more of the work to do, so we're going to end up at 12 weeks to completion. So this is not a good thing. People lose their jobs over this kind of stuff. As you can see here, here's the project managers that were doing this project actually fleeing for their lives. So what would you say are the steps for earned value management? If you wanted to actually implement this methodology into your organization, how would we go about doing it? Well, you know what? We can actually break it down to a few steps to get it done. First thing, we got to decide, well, where will we record this information? Where will we actually manage it? And we can really put it into one of three categories that gets used out in the industry. The first one is actually the most popular one, and that's using spreadsheets. Just simply the ease of use of being able to open an Excel spreadsheet and start creating calculations in there. You don't need a book. You don't need to go to a training class, and everyone has it for free. It gets used the most. But as you've probably heard discussed quite a bit, and maybe see yourselves, that there's definitely some issues with using spreadsheets. A lot of potential for error, and a lot of manual kind of setup and management that has to happen. But you could see there's a couple of other avenues that you could go. You could use a finance-focused system. A lot of the accounting systems out there, like ERP systems, SAP, accounting systems like Viewpoint, Dexter Chaney, they use they have modules of their own for being able to manage the project control side and the project performance, and it's going to include all this earned value kind of measurements that we've been talking about. The third option is project-focused systems. So Hard Dollar actually falls into this bucket. So these are systems that are really all around managing your project. So they're away from the accounting side, they're on the operations side, everywhere from putting the estimate together, but then kind of instead of having to jump into another system, you can stay in that system and continue working with it to do all of your project performance management, your earned value management. So it's going to fall into one of those buckets. And so as you are deciding to implement something like this, you really want to make sure that you're using the system that is right for you. We'll take a look at Hard Dollar right towards the very end, just so you can see earned value management in action a little bit. One of the things unique about Hard Dollar is that it actually incorporates the scheduling aspect quite a bit. We have a really tight integration with Microsoft Project and with Primavera that allows you to be able to bring all that scheduling information that's involved with earned value management right into the cost management. So let's talk through these steps. Step one, of course, first you're going to need to define the scope of the budget. So you can see I'm taking that same example with the railroad job, and you can see how I've broken out the scope. So we're going to build this railroad. It's 4 miles, and I've broken it into 4 milestones, one for each mile. Step two is then to define the budget, like we were talking about, the planned values for each of those activities. So for each mile, I have budgeted out $1 million, and we see that rolls up to $4 million. The third step is to bring scheduling into the mix. So we're going to take that budget, and we're going to put it in our schedule so that we can then schedule out each one of those tasks when they're going to occur. Okay, so what we see on this graph now is a very common thing that you see in earned value management. It's an S-curve graph, which is taking both cost and time into consideration. So you can see the lines going there represent each week that we have scheduled for this, and you see this line going across. Well, that line is our planned value. We're actually looking at the budget week by week, and you can see that we've scheduled $1 million for each week. All right, well now the next step is we've got to get to that earned value number, right, so we can know where we should be. So we are going to need to get that information from the field, like we talked about. We need to be tracking out in the field how much are our guys actually doing out there, how much of the work's getting done. Let's get that percent complete information back so that as a project manager we can know the kind of the true measuring stick where we should be. And again, following this example, you can see that at 3 weeks we are well below the $3 million mark that we see at the planned level. So a little key with these S-curves, anytime the earned value is below the planned value, like we see here, that gap is telling you you're behind schedule. All right, so we are well behind schedule. That's a pretty big gap. The final element is we would like to see how much money have we actually spent at this point. So that's the fifth step. We can get our actuals information back from the field as well, right? And there's definitely project systems that can help you with that, accounting systems, or if you want to do it more of a manual way using Excel or manual timesheets, whatever method you're using, you can get that information back in, and we can see, all right, we've spent $2 million, which is below what we budgeted, but we know from the earned value that that green line is going to end up going well above the red line as we go for another 8 weeks to finish this project. So this S graph is a very nice visual, very commonly used, and there's reporting tools out there to help you be able to pull this up automatically based off of the information that's come back to you. But there's a few other measurements that are also helpful as you're monitoring things that are involved with earned value management. Let's take a look at a couple of those. First one is something that we call Schedule Performance Index, or SPI. You'll hear it called a lot. And this is just a little numeric indicator. It's in relation to the number 1. Okay? And what Schedule Performance Index is telling you is how efficient are we being? Are we going ahead of schedule or behind schedule? Okay? And the way that that's measured is taking 2 of those ingredients that we talked about. You have earned value and you have your planned value. And you're taking your earned value, you're dividing it by the planned value. And what you get out of that is a number either greater, equal to, or less than 1. If it's greater than 1, guess what? That means you are performing ahead of schedule. You're being more efficient than you thought you'd be. That is good. Anything below 1, bad. That means that less work has been completed than planned. And if you, by chance, happen to be exactly where you thought you'd be, well, we call that a miracle because that never really happens. Cost Performance Index tells us about the efficiency of your costs. So what we mean by that is, how much are we earning for each dollar that we spend? Hopefully we're earning more than we're spending. So again, this is a simple equation, and it has to do with your earned value again. But now instead of dividing your earned value by your planned value, you take your earned value and you divide it by your actual cost. And this is something that if you're using a project control system, all of this is calculated for you, right? Well, once again, if you're greater than 1, good or bad? Definitely good, okay? That's telling you you are earning more than you're spending. That's great news. Going back to the railroad, we had earned $1 million, spent $2 million. We definitely would be below 1. We'd be at 0.5, actually. Very bad. And if we ended up right on target, once again, probably a miracle. So let's make sure that this gels for you, makes sense to you. Let's do a little case study. In this case, the plan project that we're going to be working with, we plan it's going to take a year, take 12 months. Okay? And it's going to be $100,000. So we are going along, and after 6 months, here's where we're at. We're 40% complete, and we've spent $60,000. So my question for you, see if you can figure it out for yourself here. What would the planned value be? And this one's a little bit tricky. Remember, it kind of depends on what the duration is so far. We've used 6 of the 12 months. So if your guess is 50% of the $100,000 for your planned value, you're right. Remember, your planned value is your scheduled budgeted values. All right, now your earned value, remember how we calculate that? That's taking your 40% complete and multiplying it by the 100,000. So you should end up with 40,000 for your earned value. And then you have your actual cost. Well, we see that right there. That's the $60,000. All right, so now we have the stuff to work with. So remember, Schedule Performance Index, we get that by taking your earned value and dividing it by your planned value. So let's just take a look at what happens here. Here we have our earned value, $40,000, divided by 50,000. We end up with a number greater or less than 1. Well, 0.8. It's less than 1. What does that tell us? Are we performing according to schedule? No, we're not. We are behind schedule on this. So we're going to have to work extra hard to catch up. Cost Performance Index, we take that earned value, and this time we divide it by the actual cost. So 40,000 divided by 60,000, so we're at 0.67 for our CPI. So that's just basically telling us we're spending more money, quite a bit more money than we had earned. Okay, so it's a great way when you're looking in your system that you're using. It's a great way you can go run down the list and just look for anything that's under 1. Anything under 1 is a problem, something that needs to be addressed. Now, you don't have to use CPI and SPI. You could just look at this and say, oh, look, I've earned 40,000, I've spent 60,000. It doesn't take a genius to see, okay, we have a cost variance here of 20,000. So you could just measure cost variance as well. Okay, it's just whatever works better for you. All right, the last acronym of the day. EAC, Estimate at Completion. So this is the final element of earned value management, and it's really all about forecasting. So great, we know the coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? We know the plan, the actual, and the earned, but we haven't yet tried to predict, well, what does that mean for where we're going to end up at the end? We want to always try to keep track of, are we going to end up over budget? So that's really what this is all about. So estimate at completion, it's calculated by taking what you've done, remember that's your actual cost, and adding to that what you predict is going to happen. Okay? Now, there is another little acronym there, ETC, which stands for Estimate to Completion, which is just a way of describing that prediction of what for the remaining amount. Okay, so if we've done 25% of that railroad, we're trying to predict how the 75% that's left is going to go. That's what we call our estimate to completion. So we are going to add what we've done so far, our actuals, to what we predict. Now, that prediction, it can be calculated in a lot of different ways. So, for example, you could make the assumption that the rest of the work is going to perform the way that you had planned originally. So you could kind of assume that things are going to go the way you budgeted out for the rest of the work you're doing. So that might be a good option maybe early on. You don't have a lot of information coming back from the field, so you don't have a lot to go on. We're just going to say, well, for that remaining 75% or whatever, a good option might be that the work is has progressed a lot farther, and you want to come up with an average of here's what's happened so far. It's pretty indicative of how we think it's going to go. Let's just make the remaining amount be the average of what we've done so far. So a lot of different ways you could do that. One other way is you could actually kind of manually come up with your estimate to completion, your remaining amount, by working up a detailed cost model, just kind of working up your forecast, bottoms-up estimating of it, and add that to what you've done so far. So the key is to calculate the estimate at completion to be as accurate as possible and not to fudge the numbers, frankly, not to come up with really good numbers that make you look good so that you can hide behind those, because obviously the point will come where that's going to bite you. It's going to come back to haunt you. Okay, great. So if we're looking at earned value management, a little summary. We're going to test your knowledge a little bit. Name that acronym. So we have the different acronyms that we talked about today. And go ahead and test yourself, see how you can do. So the first one here, we have PV. What does that stand for? Remember, it stands for planned value, and that stands for the budgeted cost for an activity in your WBS. So good job if you got that. Next one, BAC, was the total of all those planned values, and we called that your budget at completion. Okay. EV was earned value, which represents how much you should have spent so far. Remember, that's calculated by taking your planned value, multiplying it by your percent complete. Then we have our actual costs. SPI, Schedule Performance Index. Again, a quick way to be able to monitor if you're ahead or behind schedule and it's in relation to 1. If it's less than 1, Remember, that is bad. If it's more than 1, that's good. CPI, same kind of thing. Cost Performance Index monitors whether you're earning more or less than you're spending. And the last one, EAC, Estimate at Completion, a way to forecast or predict where you're going to end up on the project. So great job. Let's jump in now, take a quick minute and look at what this would look like in a project cost management kind of tool. In this case, we're going to use hard dollar. So we are going to jump over to an example in hard dollar. In this case, a little project that we put together. We're going to use that same rail example that we used. So I have my railroad job and my budget item, building the railroad, which is 4 miles, $4 million, and I get there by these 4 tasks, 1 for each mile. And each of them is $1 million. So there's the scope defined and the budget is defined. This would be my planned values here. Now along with that, like I mentioned before, hard dollar is able to connect your planned value, your actual costs with schedule. So pull up Microsoft project that I am working in, which I just have on my other screen. I'll pull it on over. Now this is through a synchronization process, so it's automatic. It's kind of a real-time kind of thing where I click a button and it's able to send that budget information that I come up with, send it right into Microsoft Project so that then I can schedule out the tasks. Okay? This would be the same, by the way, with Primavera. So by bringing those two things together, I now have the timing defined of when I'm going to be able to complete each one of these things according to what I'm planning. So if I jump back over to hard dollar, you can see that I've been able to, since I have synchronized with Microsoft Project and defined that, I've pulled those planned dates back into hard dollar so that I can use that as I'm moving forward with my earned value management. So we are awarded the project, we are getting underway, and we are starting to track our work. So now I'm wearing the project manager's hat, and I jump over to my job tracking. Now if we look at the job tracking here, built into our job tracking, we have all of those elements that we were talking about before. We have our planned value, our earned value, actual cost, cost variance, estimate at completion, and CPI I have showing here. So looking at this, we can see that first mile, I did 100% of it. That rolls up to overall the building of the railroad, I'm 25% done. So it immediately calculates for me the earned value is $1 million, and I've brought in actual costs from the field. Now I could enter those in manually. I could have them import in from a spreadsheet or another application, or I could use hard dollar has a timesheet application to be able to pull that information in. And we see a cost variance. The cost variance, where is that from? That comes from taking our earned value and our actual cost and looking at the difference. And it makes it very clear, kind of highlights it, that I'm $1 million over budget at this point. Now in hard dollar, we have various forecasting methods that we talked about. So that's that estimate at completion. So I could actually open up that task to get a more detailed view, and I can come to forecasting details, and you can see I have a bunch of forecasting information down here. It tells me my planned value, my actual cost, and also tells me my estimate at completion here. Well, I can change my estimate at completion depending on what forecasting method I'm using. Right now I'm saying for the remaining work, base it off of an average of what I've done so far. And when it calculates, it comes up with $8 million that's going to cost me. Now I could use different methods that are built into hard dollar. You can see I can even create a manual one if I'd like. But let's say maybe a better indicator is the most recent performance. Oh, I don't have any recent enough entry, so we'll go back to maybe based on planned. So based on plan performance, it's less because it's assuming that even though we started off bad, started off slow, the remaining amount of the work is going to go according to what we originally budgeted. In that case, that would improve things. So if I can get our crew into gear and get things on the right track, maybe I feel we can get things, we can correct the ship and not end up nearly as much over budget. Along with this, in hard dollar, this can be a reporting tool in and of itself. However, we also have another report engine that lives in the cloud where anybody in the organization that needs access can get access. And that's what we call Lasso, project intelligence. Okay? The idea behind it is reports and dashboards at your fingertips that you can get to very, very quickly and easily. So let's just bring up an example of what Lasso, which is our reporting part of hard dollar, how it looks. So notice I'm in a web browser, and I'm in what we call a portfolio. So it's just a way to group my projects together. I happen to have just one project right now in this portfolio. And what I'm looking at here are the different choices I have for reports to look at. All right, different dashboards. So for example, maybe I just want a straight report that I could print out. We'll take a look at just one example here, the portfolio cost report. And we can see straight report, right? Not too visual, but some people still like to just have the numbers. And we get those same numbers that we were looking at, our original budget, current budget, earned budget, our actuals, our current variance, and our forecast. Now I could also go into more of a visual kind of view like this S-curve example, which I'll pull up here. And I got to filter down to the railroad job and apply that. Okay, so I got some man-hour information, and I also have that S-curve starting to indicate to me where's my earned value compared to my actual compared to plan. And I'm able to pull this up just right away as it draws information from whatever project I'm working in. I can also push this kind of information out to people that need it as well. So the idea here is all this earned value management information is great, but if it takes too much work for me to get to that, then it's not worth it. Because by the time I get this information, it's too late. The job's already mostly done. But if I can automate this kind of functionality and get the pieces in place so that it doesn't require a lot of manual input to get my eyes on how we're doing, then I can start to take advantage of this. I'm not spending a lot of time trying to build reports. I'm able to take action on information that's quickly coming to me. So that's the idea. That's just a little view of it in action. Just a couple of, actually, let's jump back to presentation here. We'll just minimize this down. And let's go ahead and open it up to questions. So we have about 15 minutes available to you. If there are any questions whatsoever, please feel free to type them into the chat if you haven't already. We'll go ahead and start taking these questions. The first question that comes our way is, what's the difference between estimate at completion and estimate to completion? This is definitely something that tripped me up for a long time as I would kind of accidentally interchange these things. Well, estimate at completion, you'll remember, is taking what you've done so far and what you predict to do and putting those things together so you can see them together. And that gives you your total forecast cost at completion, basically, is what you come up with. Estimate to completion is just taking the remaining amount of work and estimating how much it's going to cost to do that, instead of all the work you've done so far plus the remaining work. Okay. Another question that comes up, does hard dollar allow you to set up a baseline budget at completion? Okay, so we talked about budget at completion. Again, that's the total of all of your planned values for the budget. And if we jumped back to hard dollar and took a quick look there, there is the ability to set up basically a snapshot of your budget and say, hey, this is the authorized budget. We're not going to change it. In hard dollar, we refer to that as the original budget. And there is the ability to go in under project execution mode and to, you can see I've already done it, you can create the original budget. And in doing that, you basically establish your budget at completion. Okay, another question. Can hard dollar prepare a DoD contract performance report? Okay, great question. The answer is, well, it depends on what the standards are that you're looking for. With our reporting tool, Lasso, Project Intelligence, it should have all of the, it should meet all of those government requirements, like the ANSI requirements, to be the more robust kind of earned value management metric. Because with Lasso, you're able to put together reports that's much more flexible, where you can even build some of your own calculations in there for your EAC, for example, to be able to meet those requirements. Then once you have those built up as reports and dashboards in there, they're built and you can reuse them as much as you wish. So I guess that was a long way of saying yes, it should meet those. Although I would want to look at those requirements a little more in particular before, you know, doing a hard confirm on that. All right. Is there anyone else that has any questions? Feel free to type it in there if you do. Appreciate all of those that have participated and gave some feedback there and questions. We will go ahead and cover just a couple more things and again, feel free to comment or question as we start to wrap things up here. First of all, next steps. These CEU presentations do allow you to get some credits, and that's based on the completion of a quiz that we put together that covers the material that we covered today. So we will be emailing you a link to the quiz. It'll be sent following this session. Simply answer the questions of the quiz, submit it, and then as long as you pass, which I predict everyone will, you will receive a certificate via email within 5 business days. And just wanted to end with a few of the upcoming events that we have going on. To remind you of the Project Cost Management Roundup that we're very excited about here in Scottsdale, sunny Scottsdale, Arizona in February. A great chance for you to get out of the cold and come down, do a little golf, enjoy some time collaborating with fellow people in the industry, learning more about hard dollar, learning more about the industry. That's coming up on the 10th and 12th of February, 10th through 12th. We also have a couple of E101 training and 201 training coming up. Those classes are coming up October, as you can see listed there. Our next CEU webinar will be Principles of Estimating. That's coming up September 25th. So if you've felt like you've gotten value of what you've covered today, jump back in on the 25th, and we'll continue with Principles of Estimating. And we also wanted to let you know about the Learning Center that Hard Dollar has recently unveiled. We currently have budget management, rational forecasting, benchmarking in there, and many more courses to come. These are basically courses that you can take whenever you want, wherever you want, at your own pace, and be able to learn kind of on the go without having to be in a classroom with an instructor. So that being said, looks like another couple questions did come in. Okay, very good question. Is it possible to have an SPI that is greater than 1 and a CPI less than 1. And yeah, it just depends on what your actual cost is and what your planned value is. So it's all in relation to that earned value. So if your actual cost is very high, then you could have a CPI under 1, even though you're performing ahead of schedule. So if you just think about how that would work, you could be you know, really making good time but spending way too much money. And another question here, will this presentation be available at hard dollar for others to view later? That is absolutely true. This is a recorded session. That was one thing that we failed to mention, actually. And you will be getting an email confirming the location. It'll have a link in it, and it'll be available up on our website. So thank you for that question. Thank you, all of you, for your participation. And it looks like that wraps up any questions that we have for today. So that being said, we just want to thank you for attending. Hopefully it was helpful for you in covering the basics of earned value management. Again, if you should have any questions at all, feel free to contact us. You can see our website or our landline. And you have contact information up on our website as well. So feel free to reach out to us if you should need anything at all. Thank you very much, and have a great day.